Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Week in Guns, brought to you by Patriot Patch Company, VZ Grips, MAF Corporation, and FFL Payments. This show offers commentary on the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz. I'm your host, Matthew LaRosiere, and I'm joined once again by the Rat Man, Ivan the Troll.
I'm a weary traveler this week. I'm your average hobo with my traveling stick, with my little knapsack.
You tie your little handkerchief full of toothbrush, a toothpaste, flannel for your face,
and a brick of 22s.
and a brick of 22s. Yeah, no, I stopped by. So that's the hitchhiker he's got there. Something we've been doing a little work on together. This is actually one of the first projects we've done that Ivan actually kind of let me go my own way with, without reining me in too much. But yeah, I stopped by Academy and I was like, I wonder what weird, awful 22 they have, just to like see what it'll eat. And I found the Federal Birdshot, number 12, like tiniest little lead pellets you can find, 22. So we're going to play with that a little bit.
Yeah, that's the rat shot. They made it for me.
I refuse to call it rat shot because it won't be used on our homies. It'll probably be used on.
No, it's shot made especially for rats.
Yeah, to use against other menaces. It was a lot. It was like 50 cents a pop. Kind of
like grape shot is made for grapes to defend themselves.
All right, let's go right on into it. We have, first up, this has been the subject of a lot of misinformation and stuff. There's a New York bill, right? And they're gonna just ban all of the Glock pistols on account of they're gonna all the Glocks pistols gone on account of the switcherator is gonna come for them. Yeah, no, this is Senate Bill S9225 regulating pistol converters and convertible pistols. So any of those pistols that you can take out on a hot summer day, done. So yeah, right now it's still in committee. Again, New York State bill makes it illegal for certain persons to possess or sell a pistol converter or converted pistol. And let's just go through the summary real quick. Section 1 amends subdivision blah blah blah, which defines machine gun and adds 2 new subdivisions to that section to define the following terms: pistol converter and convertible pistol. And just to cut to the end for you guys, the way they define this is they define a pistol converter as a device which, and their definition of machine gun is a little more straightforward than federal law, where it says it's more straightforward and then also more ridiculous because it says multiple shots rapidly, specifically by a single continuous pull of the trigger. So the pistol converter itself is a device designed to make a pistol do that.
And it mounts to the slide specifically.
Yeah. And so a convertible pistol is defined in this proposed law as something which becomes a machine gun just by adding a pistol converter, which is very circular.
Right.
Some of the tubers, right, have been freaking out saying, oh, they're trying to ban all the Glocks, right? I mean, what's your take on this?
So I went and read through the bill language, and there was a lot of people, and I'm not sure where they got it from. I assume it's just like the bill's title, because the bill's title or like summary says that, oh, it's a bill to ban convertible firearms. It doesn't ban possession of them, though. And I saw a lot of people saying, well, this will make all of your Glocks illegal.
Right.
If you have a Glock in New York, if this bill were to pass, and I think there's very slim chances that it would. I think this bill's probably it's one of those like pie in the sky sort of gun control ideas. Right. But even if it were to pass, possession of the Glocks you currently have would be fine. It would ban future sales of them, and then somewhat confusingly, it would ban transporting them. I couldn't find transport defined anywhere else in the New York criminal codes, so I assume that this is something that they would have to hash out. And this is the reason they have committees, right? Is to hash out what does transport mean? Like, if you're licensed to carry, does that mean it's transporting? Is transporting just like a commerce definition of transporting versus it's in the back of my car transporting? Because of course those are different as far as how laws want to go after things.
Right.
So but again, even as written currently in its very very primordial state, This bill does not ban the mere possession of Glocks.
Yeah.
It's
And
interesting,
so
though.
and to be clear, he's not defending the law.
Right, not
He's
defending the law,
tempering
just
yeah.
right. They're doing enough awful things as it is, and you don't have to invent additional extra awful things that they're trying to do to make it seem worse. I understand,
unless you're trying to get clicks, in which case the only way to survive is to invent awful things.
Invent awful things that nobody's actually doing. The sort of interesting thing I think about this bill is it specifically talks about, like the pistol converters it's trying to get. It's very closely parsed down to stuff that gets mounted on a slide. Meanwhile, there's some funny widgets that will work in handguns that don't have to be mounted to a slide, right? And this bill wouldn't affect those. It wouldn't define those as pistol converters. If your pistol happened to be an AR, it doesn't have a slide, and the funny thingy that you'd put in it wouldn't attach to the sliding parts anyway.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't bother you with your Yankee Boogle, which is sort of interesting.
Yeah, there are other things that bother you.
And yet, of course, that gets us back around to another point where everybody wants to point to these sorts of laws and be like, but that's already banned. Isn't that already illegal? And I believe New York's definition of machine gun already captures these things pretty well. I think that they're building this definition in so that there's not any sort of wiggle room. And of course, the sad irony, right? Sidetrack of a sidetrack. The sad irony is they're not going to prosecute any of this shit anyway, because they'll give prosecutors these tools to stop the people that they catch with these guns, and then they won't. Yeah, but
there's so many like absurd subdivisions already, and there's the ones that they've kind of been like Pavlovially conditioned to use, so they're going to just keep doing that.
Right, but the people saying like, "Oh, that's already legal." Well, the reason states like duplicate federal law is because the feds are a lot less gung ho about prosecuting this stuff than state level prosecutors, right? Because the federal government wasn't really supposed to have police power. That's a story for another time. We can tell that story another time. Whenever there's a new federal government and they do that one, they should like limit their powers with a document that limits their powers. It'd be a good idea. Anyway, the reason the states duplicate these sorts of laws is so that their prosecutors can go after someone, because federal prosecutors are very selective about the cases they take, which is why their conviction rates is so high. Is it's ones that they're fairly certain that they're going to nail people on. And of course, they also choose to prosecute the people they know that they can get to plea more often. So like the people with the people with something to lose, but it's not too much to lose that they're going to fight for it.
Right.
It's a horrible thing, our justice system. And I guess a little soapbox.
It's all gamesmanship, which is bizarre in the criminal context, right? Like it's something you expect to see in like class action lawsuits, but then, gaming, and I never understand the system of incentives for the prosecutors on the federal level, because it's very rarely like an actual dangerous person, and it's more like if I can get my numbers up, they're gonna give me an extra biscuit at the party.
I'll get to meet my fellow Lizardkin King.
They might name me Vice Oberst Gruppenking.
The thing I want to point out though is the more familiar I become with the criminal justice system, as if you can call it that, in this country, is people are woefully unaware of exactly how bad it is, and it's not until they're exposed to it in the worst possible ways that that their eyes are opened, like, oh my God, this is awful. And I think that's a big part of the reason that so many criminal justice reform advocates are people who have been in that system or involved in that system, or at least have seen what that system does to people's lives.
Yeah. And then the funny thing is, the like triple irony there is that the moment you get the exposure to the criminal justice system, either as a defendant or as a defense attorney or a somebody who's closely related to one of those two things, you then are discredited as either a criminal, right? Oh, you're just saying that because they got you because you're a criminal, or even worse, you're a defense lawyer, which like somehow I I sit here and rack my brain around it, and I try to understand how it turned out that like the criminal defense lawyer is the sleazeball.
And it's not the government stooge who wears a scaly lizard suit that's totally not their real skin.
Well, and here's the best thing. I have a good friend who, and we were like this in college, and we finally started to get closer again. He turned out he's a cop, and we were hanging out the other day, and he was telling me about, oh yeah, no, and I do this to like really, you know, like get the jury on our side or whatever. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, you realize this is a David and Goliath story, right? He's like, oh yeah, and I go, you're not David. You're not.
You're the bad guy.
Yeah, he's like, I was like, let me ask you something. If when a defense lawyer, because this is a big pet peeve of mine, so when the defense lawyer asks you a question, do you answer him or do you turn to the jury and look at them in the eyes? So, oh, you always make eye contact with the jury. I'm like, that is so fucked up. That is a game. Like, it's supposed to be the lawyer is asking you questions and you are answering their questions into the record. You are trying to play. And I asked myself, and they taught you that in the academy, right? He's like, well, yeah. I was like, that's a mind game. That's literally a misleading, horrible thing. And my favorite thing to do, which we've actually done in court, is when they do that, when you ask them a question and they go, oh, so actually how that works is you then say, I see you're making hard eye contact with the jury. Is that something they taught you to do in the academy? And then they're under oath and they go, yes. And the jury suddenly goes, right? Because they feel manipulated.
Right.
But that's the thing is you're using manipulation tactics. And I explained to him, I was like, bro, you are on the side of I understand that you're a cop, and by the time it's at the trial level, you're just a witness and you're not experiencing the full weight of it. But there's a dude in corner A, and you know what? He might have did the thing, right? And with the people that he works with, frankly, I bet you they did it. Right? But still, there is a slow and cumbersome, wildly expensive machine that has directed all of its energy into just crushing this human being. And you're one of the cogs in that wildly expensive machine. And what does he have? A guy. He's got himself one guy.
He has what the court hasn't already taken from him.
Right. And who's standing in his corner? A guy. A defense lawyer. So, like, how about just sit on the stand and tell the truth?
It seems too frequent that prosecutors and their cronies, their for lack of a nicer way to put it, their paid actors, will think that everything's like an Elliot Ness story, right? Like they're out to get Al Capone, that this is a really bad guy, and I don't know where that comes from, like how they get themselves into that position where there's a lot of bad people who get plea deals or slaps on the wrist that keeps them out of court, and then the people who end up fighting stuff in court, it sure seems to me very frequently like you didn't do these things, or the way that the case has been structured, the deals they've been offered don't represent a fair assessment of how things should be in any
right.
Like regular, normal, high functioning society, and that the things that then go through the machinations that this machine requires of them, by the time it gets to that point and you've stuck out your neck that far, the fact that it becomes an even steeper uphill battle is just bewildering to me. And I guess there's some slight relief, right? There's some cracks in this facade, if you will, where it seems at least appeals courts are more interested in hearing constitutional arguments, but it's crushing. I think that like at trial courts, constitutional arguments, like, I mean, if they're not ignored, they're just like, that's nice. Anyway, I think he's a bad guy.
I was reading because we did our initial brief in the Adamiak case, and I was reading some of the notes at sentencing. Well, not the notes. I was reading and this is all public record, but you can read some of the stuff that they say, right? Once it's all over, and it's like, the Adamia case, it's unquestionably not a heartland weapons case, right? This is a bunch of cut up garbage. And you just see the vitriol like leaking out of these people. It's really messed up.
Like they think they've stopped Al Capone, or like, they think they've stopped somebody who's like actually selling thousands of machine guns onto the streets, and not just a guy who's selling cut up parts that like don't work.
Yeah, it's so strange. It really does. It's blackpilling, right? Because and we'll talk about a couple other blackpilling things. Like you're staring at it, and this shit is just so fake. Like you're standing there in this marble, right, building full of, and there's over a dozen people that have been forced to sit here against their will and watch you talk for days, and it's supposed to be the House of Justice, and like the most core fundamental building blocks of our federal system. They're like, yeah, okay, so moving on. Right.
It's like that's great. I see you're preserving this issue for appeal, and it's like, no. No,
I need you to like adjudicate this. Actually,
it's like,
and like that's another thing that you'll see very often in state and federal court, where the trial judges are just like, yeah, no, I understand that's preserved. It's like, what? Do you not? No, no,
no.
No.
Answer the fucking question.
Can we like argue it? Maybe. No. Oh. And that's how you wind up with and we'll talk about that actually in our next story. But yeah, no. So that was a huge, aside from the New York convertible pistol bill banning all the Glocks. No, it doesn't. It doesn't ban the simple possession of the Glocks, but it's clearly designed to prevent them from being sold anymore, right? And transported. Yes. So that's the funny thing is what they're doing, and I love the way you put it. What they're doing is so awful. You can point to what they're actually doing and be like, "That's horrible." Right.
And I mean, the gun control groups are signed on to this. The gun control groups have signed on saying ban all future sales of Glocks.
Right. Yeah, no. And they're for that. So I don't, how do we gain any credibility when, so here's what we've got. We've got that the anti-gunners have crashed their luxury sports car into a bus full of orphans. Right. And we're like, what did you do? And they're like, yeah, we did it on purpose. And then people in our community are saying it was 5 buses of orphans and they were all under the age of 3. And you're like, why? Whoa. Just and so then they get to go like, look, these idiots, they can't even count. It was only 1 bus. And all of a sudden we look stupid. We look stupid. Like, why can't you just be satisfied with how horrifying they're being? Right? Our villains don't have to be. Is it that we're suffering with our own internal villain complex where we're like, oh no, I would have fucked this up way worse. I got to give them more credit than that. I don't understand. I don't understand why nobody can just tell the fucking truth on either side of this. But hey, I guess that's what we're here for, and why we don't make as much money as either the fake gun rights groups or the influencers.
I think a lot of it may loop back to just a general. I mean, and this is, I'll put on my Alex Jones hat for just 1 second. I think the public school system intentionally deprives you of the information that you need regarding taxes and how they actually how taxes work. Like, I'm not talking like how do you pay your taxes, because that's the common criticism. I'm talking like how the tax codes actually work and how you avoid paying them as best you can. Like, the system intentionally doesn't provide you with that. Yeah. It intentionally doesn't provide you with an actual understanding of how civics works. Like, actually understanding how criminal trial works, actually understanding, like, how many times in public school did you hear the term jury nullification? Never for me. But it's not, I'm not going to say it's a fundamental bedrock thing of our justice system, but the fact that it's like a non-extant thing entirely, it's not even mentioned. I think that's a fundamental failing of our system. Of course, to our system, is a criticism of our system. I think it's a fundamental failing. I think our system would call that a feature and not a bug.
I did get taught about jury nullification in public school, but it was by the same teacher who taught us that it was actually the War of Northern Aggression. So that it certainly wasn't. He certainly wasn't cutting with the grain. I mean, he asked some very interesting questions about many different moments in U.S. history, and I thank him for that. It was interesting to have your beliefs challenged, and so because he did. God, I have to. I'm not endorsing any particular views right now, but I do remember when he covered the Civil War, and he's like, "All right, everybody, who knows what the Civil War was fought about?" And of course, it was about slavery. He's like, "Let's look at some letters." And he just starts going through, and he's like, "Wow!" And all of a sudden, and then and he's like, he's doing the whole like, like conspiracy theory dartboard, and he's like, "Now." And all of a sudden they stopped talking about it when who pulled their support? Wow. And he kind of left it just like that. So it was really fun. I'm tangent prone today because I'm actually sick. So if you guys like it or hate it, if you like it, go ahead and post it in the doobly-doo. Put it in the commentator.
And if you hate it, post it in the doobly-doo in the commentator.
Yeah, no, and and if you love it, I'll go ahead and spend more time in Poinciana public pools.
And you guys can vote using the thumbs up and thumbs down arrow. You can hit the thumbs up arrow if you like it, and you can hit the thumbs up arrow if you hate it.
Yeah, hit it really hard with your face.
Hit the thumbs down arrow for Giffords.
We'll hit your credit card right now and go to vzgrips.com, one of the best supporters of the show. With promotional code this week 15, you're going to get a big fat discount off of the items that they have available for sale on their website on the internet web zone. And right now we have RMR covers, which are pretty interesting. An RMR cover, because you don't want that shit anyway. So yeah, pick that up. It's only $26, and with the discount, it's going to be a trivial amount of money. If you can get it for your Beretta 1301 shotgun or Remington 870. That physically hurt me to say, by the way.
What?
We had a member of the Discord, which you can join if you give us money, but he referred to the Benelli as the 1401.
Oh my God! Yes, that was horrible.
Or no, 1410.
104, 1014, or whatever. Like it doesn't. It's the Benelli 1014, right?
Oh yeah, 1014 is what. Yeah, no, because I can't even do it.
But like spelling out the letters is like that's not what that's not what the gun is.
Yeah, he referred to it as the oh yeah, dude, that's just like the 1014. And this dude knows guns, and I just go. We all stopped. The whole conversation stopped. What did you just say? Oh yeah, the one with the stock and everything. And I'm like, no, don't know. Oh, but yeah. So anyway, vzgrips.com, promotional code this week 15 THISWEEK15. Go in, check it out, and get yourself an RMR cover for your Benelli 1301 shotgun. And
join Discord and gives money, and then we will make fun of the wrong ways that you say guns too, live on the show.
Yeah. My favorite part is when people come in and they think we were joking about being mean to them. Yes. We're not. So
especially if you get yourself a criminal record after joining.
Oh yeah, that's
anyway.
Yeah, that was good. So yeah, now we're going to talk about what they did to Dexter Taylor. 10 years.
Yeah.
10. Outrageous. Yeah, Brooklyn's 10 years. Yeah, and then spin. Arsenal of ghost guns, including rifles.
I think found it was 4 or 5 complete guns that he had. It was like nothing, but okay.
So it's an arsenal. But they were found in the most sinister place you could possibly find them. His home.
Disgusting.
A Brooklyn man was sentenced to 10 years in prison after he was found to have an arsenal of more than a dozen ghost guns inside his apartment, according to the district attorney. Dexter Taylor was sentenced to spend a decade in prison on Monday after being convicted by a jury in April on a slew of firearms-related charges. Brooklyn DA Eric Gonzalez said that the 53-year-old Taylor had ordered a number of ghost gun kits and parts from different online retailers and had them shipped to his home on Eldridge Street in Bushwick. God, you Yankees have the worst names for where you live. Bushwick. But yeah, no, so this 53-year-old black man with a family who he takes care of for daring to assemble the thing that he has a fundamental right to have. You get to just break his family for 10 years.
Yep. And I know we talked about this case before, and I guess I have two things I want to say about it. The first one is from a standpoint of cases with sympathetic victims, right? And I'm going to call him the victim here. So if you get confused, the state's not the victim here, though I wish it was.
Mr. Taylor is the victim.
Mr. Taylor is the victim here, right? I don't think you can find a more sympathetic victim from a standpoint of he didn't do like anything wrong besides buy gun parts and put them together. The police raided him because the places that sell these gun parts, in coordination with their credit card processors, right? One of the two of them end up giving information to the state of New York, who then goes and raids people because they've got nothing better to do because they've solved all the other crime and now they're moving on to ghost gun crime actually. And so they're
going to make up crimes.
They raid his house. They check his social media, and he had posted pictures of the guns that he made decorating his Christmas tree. I think that's awesome. That's something I've done. I identify with that. I think he's fucking awesome, right? I think he's a cool dude. They raid his house, arrest him, make a mess out of the whole thing. Turns out he's done nothing but like make those guns. I'm sure they're like, oh, black guy bought guns, posting them on social media. We're gonna nail him. He's selling drugs. I'm sure in the cop's mind, there's every possible negative racial connotation going on. Mm-hmm. He's done nothing but make these guns, right? He's an awesome dude. Literally just made guns.
Enjoyed making guns.
For some insane reason, the prosecutor doesn't drop it here, right? Like a rational prosecutor would go like, okay, buddy, you can't have your guns back, but like maybe stop, haha, because I have to watch out for my job too. And they go their separate ways, and he keeps making the guns, right? Right. That's how this story should have ended. Of course, the story should have ended with it shouldn't be illegal in the first place, but
right. The story should have ended by it not starting.
Right. There was at least an off ramp there, right? But no, instead they pushed through this prosecution that really can only be characterized as some sort of malicious, where he really didn't do anything. The judge they end up getting assigned as a state court judge. I know everybody wants to try and poke holes in the fact that she said that the Second Amendment doesn't exist in her courtroom. It's state court in the state of New York. If it has a Second Amendment equivalent in its little state law thing, it's not going to be a real Second Amendment. It's not going to be analogous to the federal Second Amendment, and that's what she was saying there. However, so what she's saying from a legal standpoint is true. The federal Second Amendment does not exist.
From a legal standpoint is that they had brought their Second Amendment argument. It had been wrongly denied, but simple fact is that's not a jury question. That's a question of law.
So don't bring that back up in front of the jury is more or less what she's saying. She was wrong to have denied the Second Amendment argument. There was a lot of misgivings there that I think crosses the line into malicious in this case. Because again, this guy isn't doing anything besides this, right? It's not like he's like a gangbanger who's out there, knocking over liquor stores who then has a bunch of printed guns. Mm-hmm. He just had the printed guns. It's awful. But well, of course, the fault for this law and the fault for the fact that a good man's life has now been devastated by this rests squarely at the feet of the horrible legislators who passed this law in the first place. I would like to stop and point out that we, as a Second Amendment community, have people in positions to challenge these sorts of laws before people's lives get ruined by them, right? And I think it is important for us to make our voices heard and demand better of the groups that we give money to, especially if they're a national gun rights organization who fundraises off of the fact that this happened to this man. His life was ruined, but did nothing prior to his life being ruined, despite the fact that New York passed this law years ago. This is sort of the first time they've really hammered someone with a very sympathetic case. And benefit of the doubt, maybe these groups will now use this because, right, from a standpoint of good facts make good law, which is something they like to use to excuse their inaction most of the time. The facts do not get better than this. This is the best. I mean, the only way the facts could have been better if they were all Dracos, right? But the facts are enormously good on this one. Maybe they ride this one out and help get this in front of the Supreme Court, and this would be a really, really cool case to see the question of self-made stuff get opined on. That said, I don't think it ever should have made it that far. I don't think the law should have existed in the first place. I don't think the law should have been enforced because I think the law should have been embattled. So deeply embattled by so many different gun rights groups that are national level orgs that don't have to wait for some question of standing. They can just fucking sue. In fact, they can just waste the state of New York's time.
No, Ivan, you don't understand. These groups, they know better. They have a broader legal strategy. There's a national plan. There's a national plan, and it's set by non-lawyers who have an idea, and that idea is to continue paying salaries to themselves and their small group of friends.
It's important because without them, then there's no gun rights. And so they need to pay themselves. So there's more gun rights. So there's no gun rights.
Right. And exactly. And help in a criminal prosecution must be out of your mind. Why would they do that? But it's the thing everyone thinks they would do. That's what everyone's expecting.
Yeah, no, you have to keep them on their toes.
Instead, what they'll do is say they're doing something.
Yes. Fundraise off.
That's powerful.
And so I guess that's just sort of my gripe is I'm not saying it's any gun rights group's fault at all that this horrible thing happened. However, from a standpoint of whose job is to do what, I would imagine these groups have money given to them so that they can fight laws like this and embattle these laws to the point that prosecutors are not comfortable bringing charges against somebody where the facts are good.
And also, it's not that hard to get an injunction on something so egregious.
Right.
Like if you like there, and it would be one thing if they tried or if somebody tried, right?
Right.
But just there's
literally no one has tried.
No one tried. These like the opportunities there, the talents there.
You don't have to wait for standing. You don't have to wait for the state to actually use the law.
No, you don't.
Right?
Like all you have to do is have one person who has balls. And guess what? Like there's a lot of people.
Dexter Taylor has balls. He posted this on his Facebook, and then whenever he was arrested and the cops asked him about it, he says, "Yeah, I fucking made them. I think it's cool."
Yeah. But anyway, like all that to say, guys, like this is egregious. What should be being done is proactive litigation to get ahead of this shit. And it's just not happening, and there's no excuse for it. That's what would have stopped this, right? It's either you stand out in front of it when you see some like. Here's the thing. You, dear viewer, are probably watching this. Actually, I don't know. So give me some feedback in the comments. I feel like a lot of our watcher base is people who are into homemaking fire, who are like more into it, right? Who've either made a gun themselves or know a little bit about home gun making or maybe involved in the industry or something. You're probably thinking, how is it on earth that a ban on the simplest way of acquiring a gun possible hasn't been challenged? That's just the truth. It just hasn't, right? It just hasn't happened. And the reasoning is, well, I'll tell you why I haven't done it, because I'm just one guy, and I've got a pretty full plate. In most of the cases I do it for free because it's the right thing to do. Because the ones that have wound up in my lap, especially in the criminal area, you realize that these people who face serious prosecutions are just left high and dry. So I'm not the type of guy who's going to be like, sorry, you're fucked. I'm like, no, I've got the skill, I've got the ability, I'm gonna do it. But like, there's plenty of people who want to bring these suits, who, if we just have support, right?
Right. It's
support
not like
and people to hold us accountable to actually go and do it.
Right.
It'll happen. And I've been thinking a lot about how to attack, because and dear listener, I don't know if you've seen it, but I recently got set off by Specifically, it was FPC. FPC was attacking SAF, and it was a really like shitty lowdown attack. Super pot calling the kettle black issue, right? And I just went ballistic, and I started telling the truth about what these orgs actually do with their money, and how they don't actually employ any lawyers, and how like all of the lawyers they ever do employ are conspicuously gone. And it's caused a lot of people to ask me like, well, where should I send my money? What group? And blah, blah, blah. Well, there's no national group that I would recommend giving your money to. First of all, just haven't seen it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's just that I haven't seen it. But people keep saying, well, what should we do? What should we do? One, I don't know if I'm the person like being the whistleblower. I don't know if I'm the one to bring the solution, you know, but just the fact that I've been thinking about it more and more, I feel like when you look at the Patreon model, why don't we just do that? But for like a bunch of guys, like
you don't need a gun rights group and bureaucracy and the management and the whole nonprofit board of directors who are like not actually invested in the mission at all. It's something that you really can scale down to the individual level where the necessary element to bring these lawsuits, right, is like a lawyer who understands gun rights. Hopefully they at least have some knowledge of the particular sector of gun ownership they're litigating, right? Like if it's a carry case, they carry a gun, would kind of be cool to see, would sort of be helpful maybe. Or if it's a gun building case, they've like, at least know what the difference between a mill and an end mill, right?
Right.
Like, just some of these things, right, would be useful. And you find that person, that necessary bare element, and what if you just gave your money to them? And I'm not saying this thing, I mean, we've talked about this some. I don't think this thing exists yet, but I think this gets this guarantees that you don't have an NRAification of whatever group you're giving money to, right? Because the people like to demonize the NRA today, right? And rightfully so. The NRA is in shambles. It seems like it's trying to get its course redirected and hopefully recover, but the NRA was fundamental, right? The NRA is the reason that in the 1994 assault weapons ban was going to be confiscatory, right? You weren't going to be able to keep them. And the thing that swung the votes away from the confiscation bill was the NRA. You have them to thank for like the fact that you have semi-automatic rifles with detachable magazines today. Seems insane to think about now because we're so far removed from that. It's like the non-American states like California and New York don't let you have those, sure, but it was going to be the entire country, and that the whole sunset provision again was a thing that the NRA was involved in having be a factor of this bill. Go look at the voting record on the assault weapons ban. There were Republicans who voted for that. Yep, that's just where gun rights was, and the NRA made gun rights a partisan thing, right? That was a massive victory that people don't give them any credit for, and I think
they also don't give them credit for a lot of the and frankly the smaller groups who. And here, I'm not supporting the NRA. I'm not a member. You won't find me being one. You'll find me working with the NRA because if something is being done to help, I'm going to help, and I'm not going to overcharge, right? So I feel like I can do more good than harm that way, but I'm not going to be a member. That said, if you actually look dollars to donuts, I'm not convinced they're less efficient than any of the other
right.
groups.
And that's not. That's sort of the tie-in there is that eventually the NRA like they accomplished their goal sort of well enough that now they're well endowed, got lots of money, and they're sort of left without a direction when the assault weapons ban sunsets. And so they sort of become like an industry lobbying sort of thing, and they branch out, much wider than they'd been before. But right, they don't really have a good direction to push in. And that's unfortunate. And I think you can attribute a lot of that to the fact that their director wasn't a gun guy. Mm-hmm. Like anytime you see him holding a gun, it's like, hell no. He was like a good nonprofit genius, and he accomplished, he did a good job of directing the NRA through that tumultuous time. Right. But then it sort of went to shit because they didn't have a direction to push in, because and this is total speculation. Had they had a leader who was a gun rights guy and said, okay, the next thing we go after is suppressors, I think we'd have them off the NFA today. The NRA had plenty of momentum and plenty of money. The political appetite for it was there in that whole 9/11 timeframe where people were like, I love guns again. Yeah. But that of course is all speculation. But back to your point, I think that NRAification, right, that these groups may set out with a particular goal, but they either accomplish them or realize their goal is like, maximal human liberty or whatever. It's actually really hard to do. And what's much easier to do is just be retroactive and then rake in donations.
Right.
So you wait for big bad politician man does a thing, you ask for donations, you maybe push back against thing. And that's it. That's the extent of your litigation, is you sort of maintain the status quo, and you call that,
and you make sure to do all the same litigation as your homies,
right? And so
it's sure to do it all the same.
Then you have a bunch of groups in synchronicity, often filing briefs in the same circuits that make the same arguments, oftentimes using lawyers from the same law firms. And so like it sort of coalesces around a bunch of unoriginal ideas that are made by lawyers who aren't gun people, and they're all pushing back against the same thing. And I'm not saying that new things shouldn't be pushed back against, certainly, but there's enough bad stuff out there that you shouldn't have to anyway, fundraise off of just latest bad thing and have that be like, oh, they're banning Glocks in New York. Okay, but are they really? And is this really something you're going to fundraise off of? Because I would be much, right. I don't support any of these groups currently. I've supported MSI most recently, and I would recommend MSI's model as probably another working model where it's entirely volunteer run. Like, they spend money on legal work, and that's it. There is no board of directors, there is no salary, there's no marketing.
Well, there is a board of directors, all volunteer.
Right. Not a paid board of directors, I should say. Yeah,
you should say we are all volunteer, because I was very proud to be made a member. But yeah, no, there's stuff like that. But I think the core hook here, right, is that when you have this, it's the same thing as a corporation, which is only a few steps removed conceptually from a government, right? Where there's this amorphous blob, right, that's spending other people's money for other people's benefit. And so then you get situations like with FPC in the Illinois case, the lawyers they picked are like saying, oh yes, of course the NFA is constitutional, of course, right? And like, and the group gets to say, oh, but we didn't do that, right? I was just that, right? It's like,
it was just them, maximum human liberty, bro.
Yeah, but right. And so they get to all those mulligans again and again and again. But so here's the thing: if you're going to support something, and this is me like orally processing this, what do you want from your gun rights, donation? Do you want litigation specifically? Do you want lobbying? Those two things are very different, and the same entity cannot do both. It's not going to, can't. There's just the interests do not align correctly. Groups like nonprofits, good for setting up lobbying, but also difficult. It becomes difficult. It shouldn't be a C3. You shouldn't be giving money to C3 if you want to see lobbying happen. They can do some lobbying, but even C4s, it's still limited. So I don't see a great way to like directly accomplish that aside from supporting the industry. The industry is good at eating itself. So there needs to be like some for-profit group that can come together with like objective, hard stone guidelines that can then fund the lobbying. That would be the best way to do that. If your goal is litigation, or if what you want, to support is litigation, I think a great model would be, in full disclosure, this is part of what I do, okay? But there's a few lawyers that I know that are fantastic, right? And are not being fully utilized because, frankly, there isn't a market for doing gun rights good, right? Because the people who wind up being the best cases are people like Dexter Taylor. They don't have a lot of money, right? So your traditional defense firm's not going to take it up. You kind of need to have a little more support. But if there's like, let's say there's 10 guys all across the country that, you can donate to their work and you can watch their filings. And if they start to stray and say weird shit, well, who are they going to blame it on? No one. They're accountable. They are accountable to you. I'm accountable to you. If you support me and you tell me, hey, you said this thing and I think it's wrong.
You want the Mexicans to have machine guns?
Right? I have the opportunity to try to explain it, but if it doesn't make sense to you, well, then what do? Support somebody else, right? I feel like that's way better, and that's the only way you can get accountability is by having accountable people. Because with a top-down group, it's going to be 8 layers of abstraction. Who are you ever going to hold accountable?
Right. You're left with a group that will, on the same day that lawyers they're paying file a brief that says NFA is constitutional, machine guns can totally be legally banned. Mm-hmm. This group is then on their social media stuff going to be posting about how the Hughes Amendment's bad and Waco's bad and all this stuff, and we believe in machine gun vending machines, yo. It's like the fact that they're not immediately taken to task over like you guys got to pick one or the other, because this to me sounds a lot like a grift. Really, you're telling your pay pigs one thing and then going and arguing the other. I'm not sure what to think of that. Yeah. But
I feel a little misled.
Right, and I think that you removing those levels of abstraction and removing adding that accountability, I think, is important. And maybe of course then I guess the thing, I had one thought, and maybe it's a thought the viewers will have, where it's like, well then how but then it becomes hard to wrangle these bigger groups, right? These bigger national groups aren't big, though. That's the thing, and they wouldn't need to be. These bigger national groups, if you look at the lawyers that they employ or whatever, or the lawyers that they have paid for them,
contract,
right? The lawyers that they contract out or whatever. The amount of legal work these groups are currently doing could be done by like 4 or 5 full-time dedicated lawyers. And I mean, there are, and again, I'm not trying to say that the model that they're currently using works, because I think I'm black-pilled enough to think it doesn't. But if this model were to work, right, there's droves of overqualified, overmotivated people and lawyers in the gun rights space, right, who would just love to be paid less than they're worth, but just given free reign to like go get me some gun laws, right? Go scalp some gun laws. Go make some state legislators hate you. Make them think your name whenever they go to sleep and when they wake up. And I think that sort of much more, I guess you can call it like a barbarian aspect would be welcome, at least by me. That we're not judging the success of these groups based off of let's see how many of them can get duplicative injunctions in the same circuit, right? And instead we're judging their success based off of like how many gun laws that have been around for how long have you actually succeeded in destroying?
Yeah, or even like tried, right?
And I'd be much more impressed by going after stuff that's not low hanging fruit, right? The low hanging fruit is the reactionary stuff like pistol braces. Everybody went after pistol braces. Host of the shows included, right? And that's the thing where like,
I went and got single-handedly a injunction against pistol braces.
Right. So it's not a thing.
Feed me $10 million too.
Right. That would be nice. But no, the sort of point I want to get to is you've got these. You've got these reactive issues, right? But I'd be much more impressed to see more proactive.
The real,
stuff, right?
I feel like to snap to the point, the real, like, the shit I'd want to see if we had this better model, and I'm not saying my model's better or whatever, I'm a better model. In this whole thing, I view myself as the whistleblower / chaos agent, right? I don't have a business model to shill right now. But if a better thing were to take off, the person I'd want to support would be the one who is doing the weirdest shit, like going after like specific method of carry laws, like in Louisiana, right? Like doing weird shit, or going after
Arkansas bans melting point laws.
Yeah,
like weird parts of import laws. Arkansas bans machine guns that are over 30 caliber. Why not? Right? Just go for it.
Yeah, just start chewing.
These sort of weird things, and I know, I know that there's like a public conception that's been built by a lot of these groups, again, to excuse their inaction, that taking losses on stuff hurts you. Taking losses doesn't help you, but you think about something like the decision in Bruin, right? New York's carry laws had been challenged many times before. Similar laws in other states have been challenged many times before. Never successful. Successful. Bruin overturns that in a massive way. It's sort of a thing where, like, the whole IRA and Margaret Thatcher, if you want to think about it that way, where the state has to be lucky forever. They always have to draw judges that are sympathetic to their arguments. You've got to do it once, right? You've really only got to, you've got
Well,
to
here's the other thing. Losing
case.
doesn't always hurt the cause. In fact,
Yes.
I think it actually helps because I've been in this long enough. Because here's the thing. When you have a framework of analysis that has to be applied the same way to every case going forward, and you keep bringing different cases with different facts and different considerations, and they keep telling you no, they have to start saying no in different and divergent ways.
Right. And eventually you catch them in a contradiction, which is, I mean, and that's the advantage of, I mean, if you believe the Second Amendment is right, that the interpretation of it being an individual right is itself righteous, and that eventually the facts and logic of the whole Second Amendment debate is on our side, you should not fret losses in the grand scheme of things, because eventually these losses have to come to terms with what the Second Amendment says and what the Supreme Court tells us the Second Amendment means. Right now, we've got a Supreme Court that could be better when it comes to the Second Amendment, but it's far from as bad as it could be.
Right.
And I think racking up losses right now, I really don't think hurts. You look at all of the assault weapons bans being litigated currently, right? Not a single one of them is actually in a winning posture. They have no problem losing on assault weapons bans. I think that attitude should be applied to anything else. Sue New York over their homemade weapons ban, right? So what if you lose? Have another group sue them. Have another group sue with a different set of facts. Pick up a criminal case where the facts are incredibly sympathetic.
Right.
This sort of aggressive, widespread, right? It needs to be more of a hydra and not, the broader legal strategy is like one snake and it gets its head cut off every time, sort of thing, right? It becoming so that sort of single target where it's like, here's the gun rights monolith. What does it do? Complain about Joe Biden and the things that he does, maybe push back on some of them. I'm not saying that's not good, but I'm saying that for the amount of resources the Second Amendment community expends, there could be so much more work getting done. And that, that's what a better model would look like, is more work being done, melting point laws being challenged, like the weird obscurities of some states' carry laws being challenged, all of these sorts of things, right? Knife bans, billy club bans, and some of that does exist, and that's good, right?
Yeah.
More of that sort of energy.
Yep, for sure. All right, let's get to the next story. Sorry about that, guys. We
only a 5-minute tangent.
Yeah, it was just 5 minutes. You're drunk. So next up, let's talk about the Kittson case. Another interesting case. It is a Ninth Circuit machine gun case that's really strange. That's headed for the Ninth Circuit now. And I'm actually proud to say there were a few people that I know that stepped up to help the federal public defenders, and help them get arguments straight in their appeal. And this is a good one. And I liked your tweet where you're saying, "Oh, gun rights groups, blah blah blah, federal public defenders, like straight up challenging FOPA." But so yeah, Kittson, super interesting in a lot of different ways, because the sale never actually happened in a way that was prescribed by the statute, right? This is about a guy who allegedly, like the way the government tells the story, he acted as a middleman to sell a PPSH 41 to a government informant. And they made a couple really fascinating arguments. One is the actual conduct covered by the law, and it's a pure statutory interpretation argument, exempts transfers to the government. Like when it talks about because there's two types of transfers that are exempt from 5861, and they're lawful transfers to another individual, and then in another section, transfers to the government. So they're saying that the plain text of the statute, it doesn't even matter if he thought it was illegal. He was selling it to the government. It's undisputed that this guy was an agent of the government. And the statute says lawful here and just transfer here. And the statute doesn't include attempt, so there's no attempt liability under the National Firearms Act. So you have to find him not guilty. And I think that is just the like, that is some hardcore pod racing shit right there.
Yeah.
Like, because I talked to some of the lawyers involved, and I'm like, that's big. And they're like, well, what do you think? Like, they asked, like, what do you think of that statutory interpretation? I said, you're right. You're right. I never had I had never chewed on the beans to even think of that. Right? Because I was already going into my like Second Amendment rabbit hole. But they did bring a straight Second Amendment challenge.
Yep. And it's a really good one too.
It is really good. And it's backed up by congressional record that I pulled up and unearthed and started citing in these cases. So it's actually great. It's fantastic. And they've shot holes in the machine gun ban specifically. One, it's already in the U.S. charging manual not to simultaneously charge 922.0 and 5861, largely from the Ninth Circuit. And so that's in the charging manuals everywhere, and they still make that mistake and still lose cases on that mistake. That's powerful shit. That was brought to you from federal public defenders, right, who are just trying to do their best. And so this case is super interesting. And the thing is, like, a lot of people are like, oh no, they should focus all their words on the, like, you know, on their main argument and not include anything else. But here's the thing. You got to think of this more as a chess game. And this is another criticism I have of the gun rights groups. They sit there and they put like all of their challenges are just APA challenges, and they spend all their words on like doing like hypertextual APA shit. Here's the thing. When you have multiple counts to your motions, right, and to your appeals, each one that comes after your main head comes with it effectively a direct, hey, if you don't agree with me on this one, you're going to have to deal with this one and this one, right? And all the way down to the Second Amendment in a machine gun case, the more reasonable you make that Second Amendment claim, it hyperpowers the earlier ones, because the judge is reading it. No, if I say no to all of these, I have to explain how I said no on the Bruin analysis. Right. So it's a really interesting case, and people might be worried because it's Ninth Circuit or whatever, but the Ninth Circuit, for all of its failures, when it comes to law enforcement accountability and criminal justice stuff, very often they've handed down some real wins. So
really, especially as applied to machine guns.
Especially as applied to
which is because for the unaware listener, the guy who was selling the 50 cal build kits had built some stins in California. This was ages ago. I think even pre-Heller. I think it was pre-Heller. He had built some Sten machine guns in California, but using unique receiver design, using unique parts, like he was making all of the guns there in the state.
Right.
Gets in trouble. Stinky. And his defense revolved around. Well, I made them in the state, so they're not affecting interstate commerce, which is of course fun in the Fed's hate. Right. And he did end up losing, but the Ninth Circuit agreed with him. The Ninth Circuit agreed if something's made in a state, it can't be subject to the NFA.
Right.
For the Ninth Circuit.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. I hope they keep that energy in 2024. I'm not sure if they will here. It would be very interesting to see, though, that I guess the circumstances of this guy's case, he's not. It is one of those cases where the facts aren't great, because he's also a prohibited possessor because he's a prior felon or whatever, and the prior felony wasn't like a nice felony. It was one of the not so nice ones.
It wasn't very nice.
But the sort of the fact remains, right, that they had a motion to dismiss specifically only the machine gun charges, right? And I think that the public defenders argued this in a pretty savvy way, and I'm interested to see how it goes. From a standpoint of you guys getting gassed up on this one.
in the law courts.
In the law courts.
Yeah, it's getting all done up in the law courts.
This case probably isn't NFA has gone Supreme Court on law courts on fire.
Yeah,
but
Supreme Law Court.
The chances probably still aren't great, but it's good to see these sorts of arguments made, and like Matt had pointed to, it's really more of a chess game than anything, right? Where especially if you're a public defender, you see that a lot of people end up going to jail for gun stuff, right? And I think the reason I would say most of the pre-Bruin gun rights wins we've seen has been from public defenders against 922.
Yeah,
I don't think that's by mistake. I think it's because these federal public defenders realize.
Well, we'll have another one of those from the Ninth Circuit. But anyway, let's carry on. Next up, FFL Payment Solutions, guys. FFL Solutions is a payment project by FFLs for FFL. And you guys have asked me some questions. It is for other businesses too. Literally, whatever business you want. If you want it run by straight talking people who aren't going to give you any nonsense and hook you up with great rates, just give them a call. Tell them I sent you. And if you're an FFL, definitely get hooked up with a free terminal. For other businesses, maybe. But just check them out. It's a good system company. And speaking of the other stuff we were talking about earlier, guess what company uses me as a lawyer, and thus, if they were asked for processing data, would receive very funny replies. And I'd really make them work for it. So yeah, fflpaymentprocessing.com. Get set up. Next up, we got when will this sitcom end? It's Bunter Biden. the Federal Deal Court rejected dismissal request, and the trial starts June 3.
I hope they have cameras in there for no particular reason.
I love how he's got the enscandaled dog look on his face all the time.
Yeah,
he really is starting to look more and more like his dad every passing day. Who cares? Yeah, they rejected his request to dismiss the gun charges, clearing the way for a June trial.
Do you think the adrenochromes what make them looks the same?
Yeah, a 3-judge panel of the 3rd U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals rejected his 3 arguments unanimously because the case hadn't reached a final judgment yet. Criminal defendants raising those challenges cannot appeal before final judgment, which I don't think is true, because they did bring up they made a straight Second Amendment challenge, didn't they?
I thought so.
Yeah, that seems odd. We'll have to look more at that. Oh, it was it. Okay, I didn't actually read this ruling because I don't care about celebrity lizard people. But yeah, that's a thing that's happening. It's going to trial. We'll read it more if the trial happens. Okay, I promise. Anyway, let's get to a good story now. Another a win for the Ninth Circuit. Ninth Circuit panel rules nonviolent felons can own guns. So, guys, you might not like the results of the case, but let's talk about it. On Thursday, a 3-judge panel from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals sided with Stephen Duarte and vacated his conviction. They found that the federal ban on felons possessing firearms was unconstitutional as applied to him because his underlying convictions didn't involve violent crimes. So they're kind of sticking to that core violence analysis that I espoused, in my battle with our friend Kostas, who we actually do like. And it's funny because when this decision first came out, Kostas tried to make fun of me on Twitter by citing that, Duarte is an American citizen and thus the people. Right. So he's like, haha, I got you. And then as he keeps reading, he's like, damn it, they actually agree with you. Because I'm right.
The way it's worded too is kind of interesting because they say that he's certainly the people because he's an American citizen, but
right.
I would not read that as an exhaustive analysis of what's the outer bound of the people.
Right. It's sufficient, but not necessary.
Right. I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure it may have been a state court thing, but there was an issue with a 16-year-old maybe having a gun, a right to possess a gun to defend himself because there was somebody in the home. And
Right.
I may be misremembering because it's state court, but they had found that they couldn't possess the kid for illegal. They couldn't get the kid for illegal possession of a firearm because he had Second Amendment rights in that moment. But one of those things where like citizenship can't possibly be the way this works. We've been over that on multiple previous episodes.
We have, and everyone. It all depends on your degree of, and I hate to use this word, xenophobia, but
xenophobia with an understanding of early American civics, perhaps, but
but
or lack thereof, actually. Your understanding of the lack of American civics at the founding.
Yeah, they just didn't care. But yeah, so the court wrote the Second Amendment's plain text and historically understood meaning presumptively guarantee his individual right to possess a firearm for self-defense. The government failed to rebut that presumption by demonstrating that permanently depriving Duarte of his fundamental right is otherwise consistent with our nation's history, which is 100% correct. There is nothing in the history that can support that. And it's easy to say because the history is finite. It's already happened. So we can look and read what they wrote down. And they wrote, if you like kill a bunch of people, you have to wait till you're done with jail to get your guns back. That's what they said. So, the ruling deepens the Federal Circuit split over the constitutionality of the law that bars anyone convicted of a crime punishable by more than a year in prison from ever owning or handling firearms again. Continued disagreement over the constitutionality of the law underlying those charges may motivate the Supreme Court to address the issue itself directly, especially the question of whether people who aren't violent present enough of a dangerous threat to be worthy of a lifetime gun ban. And I mean, we've got 2 cases to deal with that, right? Range and the funny name. Rahimi, the Whataburger one. So I think those will be interesting.
Great people do bad things at Whataburger.
Huh? Oh yeah.
It's like a watering hole for retards.
Whataburger is like, somebody's like, if somebody says they're gonna meet you at the Whataburger, don't. You're gonna get shot at, or it's gonna be very life-changing. So yeah. Next up, guys, it is the Best Friend MAF Corporation. This is where you can find a hitchhiker kit and also trash. Yes, under bestsellers, trash is available. Read the description. You can purchase the garbage. So go to maf-arms.com and get yourself some trash. I think you'll like what you find.
The raccoon's not included.
No, well, it might be. You never know what you get with your trash. But yeah, to get a discount, go ahead and use promotional code FUDBusters. That's FUDD Busters. Order yourself some garbage.
There's no guarantee the raccoon will be alive anymore.
Sleepy. Next up. So this is sort of was a head scratcher, and we kind of like, it caused us to do a little bit of yelling back and forth before the show. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton leads multi-state coalition suing the Biden administration over unlawful ban on private firearm sales. You remember the ban on private firearm sales, right?
Huh?
Yeah. So, of course, they're talking about the final rule on the engaged in the business, which we've touched on. It's not great. It's also not a ban on private firearm transactions. It like quite expressly like recognizes legitimate private transactions. Don't get me wrong. I think it goes way too far. But then we did go through the lawsuit because we were like, what is their argument? And I'm going to be real. This is it's not a great complaint. It's very, but I mean, it complies with the rules, and you know, you don't have to give away your full strat in your complaint. So you don't have to state every single theory upon which you rely, or every single fact underlying your theory, but they do throw the whole kitchen sink in with the complaint. So
they've loaded up a shotgun full of kitchen sinks.
Yeah, despite there being 72 pages. It's not 100% sure what the full strat will be, except we do know it's count one is, of course, we're going to go straight for the Second Amendment, right? It's a ban on a ban on private transactions is violation.
Yeah.
Excesses. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
APA. Let me be real with you guys. I don't think this is the best APA challenge. I don't. And the reason it's not a great APA challenge is because the Republicans voted for a change in the law
that enables this.
That enabled it and demanded it and changed the definition to something that would necessitate clarification.
You can't give the ATF a blunt instrument. Say, ATF, I want you to hit him with the blunt instrument. ATF bludgeons him with the blunt instrument and go, ATF, what the fuck? What's your fucking problem? Who would make you do this?
Yeah, like, let's not. And again, like, I hate that we have to do this because people just so egregiously overreact. Where it's like, no, y'all literally asked for this. Like, literally, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act straight up invited this. It like begged for it. We had like the way it was in the law made sense. It created something that they couldn't define their way out of. They changed it to pecuniary gain, and so then all of a sudden, it's when you go from for the primary purpose of pursuing a livelihood, right? Very straightforward to pecuniary gain, and then when the agency that loves to insert paragraphs into a single word says, oh yeah, so we're going to define pecuniary gain, you go, shocked Pikachu.jpg.
Oh my gosh, they're banning private sales.
Yeah. So no, like the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act was a mistake. It should not have been passed. But like, attack that, and that's not a count that's brought here.
Right.
So it's a straight challenge to the regulatory action rather than the statutory problem that that precipitated the regulatory action. And I think they're doing that because, we got a bunch of state legislators involved in this. And we can't, if they directly attack the statute, that would mean that their team was taking some credit for, what they got.
Right.
And that's not going to work. So let's look at the prayers for relief, because that's always where you can get the, best day outcomes of what they want. A, final rule violates the APA. B, final rule violates APA for a sub reason. C, APA. D, set aside the final rule. E, declare that the final rule violates the Fifth Amendment. F, declare that the final rule violates the Second Amendment. G, final rule violates the Fourth Amendment. H, declare that the final rule violates Article 1, Sections 1 and 7. I, injunctions, attorney's fees, and other award. No attacks on the actual law.
Yeah.
Why are you what did the deck chairs on the Titanic do to you such that you rearranged them so aggressively? Like
the thing that leaves me with a weird taste in my mouth with this is, I mean, it's not just this one, right? It's the sort of pro-gun state attorneys general going and suing and then making Second Amendment arguments is always weird to me, because you can pick any of these states and they've got something that's violating the Second Amendment, right? There's not a single state that has its hands clean, because they've all passed laws that regulate guns to some extent. I think Texas is pretty bad because they regulate armor-piercing ammunition stronger. I mean, they're one of few states that have laws that regulate ammunition tighter than the federal government. Like Texas is like New Jersey in this regard, just randomly regulating this stuff tighter than there's any reason for it to be. Yeah, there's nonsense. Like Florida has a bunch of bizarre bans on like very specific weaponry, which again was just never challenged because we don't have the right incentive structure to get that to happen. And also like differential bans on
anyway, on carry, I actually got super depressed when I was doing, and I need to get back to this. It was one of my best shows, and it's the one that people keep asking me to do more, the state law series. But you know what was blackpilling? Like starting with Alaska, like having that be one of the first ones, and then just realizing, oh God, this is one of the good ones. Like,
Yeah.
this sucks. There's a bunch of stupid idiot laws. So yeah, no, I think, like you said, there's a bunch of, none of these state attorney generals can sit there with clean hands. And in fact, we never see them attacking their own states either, which they can do, by the way.
Right.
Like, the closest we've seen is the damn Nikki Fried, the agriculture commissioner, who we hate. You know, like, but anyway, I hate it. But yeah, so that's a thing. I mean, I can hear the rattle of your saber, Attorney General Ken Paxton. Thank you. And thank you, Patriot Patch Company, for providing custom designed patches, apparel, and accessories for any freedom-loving individual. You know something, Ivan?
Mm-hmm.
You fill my heart to full capacity.
Whoa, I'm filling
Did
his
you know
heart
that?
with the steel's cased.
Yeah. You got that 7 and 6 in my heart.
Oh, my heart's corrosive. No. What do you think would happen if you took like a whole spam can of 7 and 6 and then you used
And ate
water? You used water to wash down the gunpowder so you could get the salt out of it, and then you drank it.
It's electrolytes.
Get those Russian electrolytes in you.
Yeah, no, it's got what young boys crave. But anyway, guys, don't go. We've still got one more story. But anyway, yeah, guys, Patriot Patch Company has been the longest time supporter of the show. They're great. Check out the new patch of the month. Freedom isn't free. Yeah, that one just came in, actually. Pretty cool patch. My wife immediately ran away with it, so that's why I was showing you the Valentine's Day one. But yeah, guys, go to patriotpatch.co and join up there. Join the Patch of the Month Club. It's a cool company. You can support them, help them support the show. And if you buy anything there, check out their accessories. Use promotional code TWIG10. That's TWIG 10. And let them know we're doing our job. All right, last up. This is great. Okay, so audience, go ahead and post right now. If you're watching live, put it in the Dougal. And if you're not, put it down in the Cope section. Do you have a truck gun?
Truck gun.
Do you keep a truck gun? Go ahead. No judgment right now. But while you're doing this, let's also think about the fact that some people might wind up having truck guns that they didn't want to have because of state laws that basically require them to disarm, and the only place they can like properly disarm is their vehicle, right? So, right, have you thought about that, right?
Yep.
So the big shocker, the completely inconceivable outcome of laws that say you have to leave your guns in a car has happened, and guns are being stolen from cars at triple the rate they were 10 years ago. Report finds. So yeah, rate of guns stolen from cars in the U.S. has tripled over the last decade, making them the largest source of stolen guns in the country. An analysis of FBI data by the gun safety group Everytown found. Congratulations, Everytown. You have succeeded in increasing the supply of stolen guns by pushing for these policies. You fucking idiots. Yeah, climbed nearly every year and spiked during the coronavirus pandemic, along with a major surge in weapons purchases in the U.S. Stolen weapons have in some cases turned up in crime scene. Quelle surprise. Yeah, this is a thing I've noticed, like, people go around and like jiggle car door handles, and they're looking for guns. That's what they're doing now. They're not looking for. My car got broken into during the COVID times, and I actually had like money in it. There was $20 in the center console, And when I woke up in the morning, my doors were open, my trunk was open, the $20 was still there, but everything was like rifled through. The only explanation is they were just looking for guns.
Right.
Right. Same thing happened with my truck one day, which is funny because it was like my dogs start barking at 2 a.m. and I start yelling at them and telling them to shut up. And then I look in the morning and my truck doors are all open and everything's all rifled through. And nothing was missing. But yeah, so the thing that sucks is I wish we lived in a place where you could just keep a gun in your car.
Right.
Because it would be nice. It would just be nice to have.
It'd be nice to be able to have your long gun in the car and your pistol on your hip, like the cowboy movies.
No, it would be great. And it would also be nice to live in a country like, it used to be, where if you're just driving down the road and you get bored and you see something funny to shoot at, you just pull out and just pull over and just start shooting at it. Whatever.
The blinking light on top of that car looks fun to shoot at.
Whoa, they stop if I hit it hard enough. That's funny. But yeah, no, so that's, I don't know. What's your take on truck guns, as it were?
Whenever you were asking the question of the audience, I realized that the ideal truck gun, given this report, I think that there's one rational conclusion that everybody, gun owners, gun haters, can agree to. SIG needs to come out with a new version of the 320 called the truck gun, the SIG 320 TG. And the trigger is actually like an electric switch, and the whole frame is full of C4. And so somebody's going to steal this gun from your truck, and then they're going to test it. And then they're going to become a statistic. The SIG 320 TG. It's patented, by the way. That trademark that I patent trade. I decided.
Yeah, he registered the copyright.
So it's mine. You can't have it. But
you can't have it. OC, do not steal.
Yeah, but no, really, I think the truck gun concept would be cool. I think that, it's certainly something that could be like fleshed out more. Like I think the Gal 5A, like the foldy uppy AR that goes underneath the pilot ejection seat. I've always thought like bailout guns or whatever are cool, and it would be cool to have that in your car for if you had to bail out of your car and then hunt a squirrel or whatever, just like the wilderness movies. just like in the movie Bail Out of the Car Wilderness Survival episode.
Just like in the movie Hungry Drive Man. No money. But I do think hungry and I know have money. I need a shooting the squirrel.
I do think it would be an interesting concept to see better explored. But the unfortunate reality is that cars, especially whenever people decorate their cars as loot drops, where like you advertise the type of guns that can be found inside of them, like that's certainly not a good idea. But criminals do realize this is a way to steal guns, right? Easy way to get guns is just start checking cars, because more people carry guns, and sort of an artifact of the fact that the country is really only 10 years removed from carry being normal. Right. That 10, 20 years, I guess, probably 20 years in some places. And your granddad, Wyoming, always carried a gun on his hip with the Bears and the 44 or whatever. Yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah. But carry being normal is really only something that most of this country has seen for the past 10, 20 years. And as an artifact of that, there's a lot of these states that are still so uncomfortable with the idea of you can have your gun in all these places, but not here. No, you can't have it here. You have to leave it in the car so it's safe.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of people who are like delusional enough to think that law makes any difference, where like someone could legally carry their gun up to the parking spot right next to the door at the school. Oh, but they're safe though, because you can't take it out. It's just idiotic, where it would never, a very clear example of would never stop a bad guy, but it leaves a gun there for them to steal, as far as the good guys are concerned.
Yeah.
So it's a non-working model, and that's again room for improvement, right? That one day I hope to see carry become normal enough that we start at a federal level, right? Because a lot of these laws are flowed down federal, the gun-free school zones, and I want to take a gun in a nuclear plant. Damn it, that'd be fun. Take my gun and point it at the nuclear reactor and say, "Make me electricity."
Yeah, do it now.
Trigger confidence post in the nuclear reactor.
Yeah, do it.
But no, I think at the federal level, at the state level, at a lot of levels, eventually we're going to have to come to grips with. There's really not a lot of places you shouldn't be able to have a gun.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
And be honest.
Yeah.
Have you ever kept a gun in your car?
Yeah.
What was it?
Glock 26, baby.
Okay. Like as a course of habit, or like was it a separate gun, or did you put your carry gun aside?
Well, carry gun aside, yeah, I've done because it was like court buildings and like because it'd be metal detectors, and then
right.
I like to fly close to the sun.
Was it a truck, truck gun, or was it just your carry gun?
Handgun.
What?
I don't think I've ever done truck gunning.
No, the handgun was your truck gun, right? Like I'm using air quotes here.
Right.
So I've done it too, and I like specifically thought of, well, that does happen or whatever, so I'll get something cheap, and it was a high point, and we called it the truck point because it lived in my truck. And then it happened to me, but they didn't get the truck point. That was the first time my car got opened up and rifled through. I had parked my two vehicles together, my beat up 95 C1500 and my Cadillac were parked next to each other. They rifled through the Cadillac and not the old truck. And the truck point was in the truck. And so at that point I was like, okay, I see you, God. I'll stop. And then I pulled the truck point out of it. But I realized that the reason I wanted to keep a gun in my car was because I was being lazy about carrying a real gun. And like, I had started to like carry the life card and other like stupid, silly little things because I was just being lazy. And I think I realized that there's only one way to really be responsible for your own security, and that's to actually just commit to carrying a real operable gun.
40 Smith & Wesson, I agree, 100%.
Every day. And so that's when I took the car out of the gun out of the car and started, actually carrying something with more than one stack and in a full power caliber. No, full power for a handgun, right?
40 Smith & Wesson Black Talons for sure.
9mm, but I have a little jar of the Black Talons, thanks to you. So yeah. I'll find a 40 gun I like. I have a P99, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, and if that's you guys, I encourage you to probably start carrying your gun. Don't leave it in the car.
Right. It's just a tricky situation, and I don't know that I can attribute this one to any particular rights group, right? Because I think that the progress that's been made on carry has been phenomenal, and it's the fastest expanding avenue of gun rights is carry. But there's always room for improvement because, like, there's some places like you can't take it out of the car at the McDonald's because it's too close to a school or something. Like, it's stupid.
Yeah, it's weird. Oh God, no. But anyway, guys, that's it for the moment. Thank you all so much for coming.
Oh, wait. I guess there's one more little artifact. The Supreme Court is going to meet and confer on all of the assault weapons ban cases. All of like the big ones. I think it's New Jersey's and it's the Illinois ones. And they're also taking SROUR, which is from New York. I'm not even going to try. It's the sound a cat makes when you step on it. And that's from New York and is dealing with the moral character clause that they added after they're supposed to not be doing those anymore. Okay. But that one's also being meet and conferred with on the 16th of this fine month of May. Are we in May? Yeah, May. And so they're talking about that here very soon. Probably what will happen because they're hearing a bunch of Second Amendment cases, right? And the eternal pessimist inside my body is guiding my hand on this one. I think the way that that's going to end up going is that they'll sit down there and they'll have a conversation about, so are we waiting until after the election for these cases? Yes or no? And the answer will probably be yes, we're waiting till after the election to take any more Second Amendment, because like a hardware ban case is, that's a hot button election issue, right? That's something that people, campaign on. I bet they don't touch it until after the election. That's just my guess. Maybe I'll be wrong, but probably a week after the 16th, we'll have a better idea as far as if they're going to grant cert on any of the assault weapons ban cases, if they're going to, ask for more briefing on the assault weapons ban cases, etc.
All right. Well, thanks for that update, and I concur in your analysis. All right, guys. So that is it for the moment. As always, we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.